Hey, good morning, everybody. This is People of Substance by LemonSkies, and my guest today is Nick Black, and we were just chatting before hopping on. By all accounts, we should have met years ago, but this is actually first time we talk face to face. Nick is a co-founder of Good United, and he's a co-founder of Stop Soldier Suicide nonprofit. Nick, please say hello.
Hey, everybody. It's good to see you, Olga. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we just discovered playing geography game that Nick's parents live down the street from me. So that's that. So there's hope of actually face-to-face meeting. But Nick, you're very well known in nonprofit circles for your role in Good United. But what I really wanted to start talking about is how the organization Stop Soldier Suicide got started.
Sure. Well, again, thanks for having me. I grew up overseas in Africa and Europe. I came back to the States for high school, and I went to Langley High School, which is a mile away from the CIA.
Yes.
And my senior year of high school was when 9/11 happened. So I was going to go to West Point, but I decided that I wanted to go to a more traditional college. I went to Johns Hopkins University, but 9/11 really cemented to me that I was going to join the military.
Okay.
And my goal was to become an Army Ranger and go to Afghanistan and to go fight the guys that attacked us. So I commissioned from Johns Hopkins and became an Army officer, an Airborne Ranger qualified fire support officer for the 173rd Airborne. My first deployment was for 15 months on the border of Pakistan at a place called Fob Tillman.
Okay.
And we fought every day. So we would get in firefights. We would have rockets shot at us. We would, and there's 120 of us. As an act of God, all 120 of us made it out 15 months later. We're the only group of 8 that didn't have anyone killed. I think in that deployment, we had 46 men killed. And why I bring that up is that 2 weeks after I came home, one of my soldiers took his own life. So we had 15 months deployment in Afghanistan. Then we came home and he took his life. I went back to Afghanistan a year later and got an email from a buddy of mine from undergrad, Brian Kinsella. Then that email was like an article from like U.S. News or something, but it said that we lost more men and women to suicide than the enemy. So my wife says I'm a moron. Some say stubborn, but I joined the military to close and destroy the guys that brought down Twin Towers. And to this day, I still get pissed off at the thought that we're killing ourselves at a greater clip than they could ever imagine.
Yeah.
So I decided I really understood what military could do. I'd never wanted to serve a career. I got out. I decided I want to go to business school. So I took the GMAT in Afghanistan. I bombed it. The second lowest GMAT score, I think, in the history of UNC Business School. But they let me in. And along the way, I started a nonprofit called Stop Soldier Suicide with 2 other guys. So that's the long-winded story of just really running the things that piss me off and trying to solve them. And that's just kind of like the story of my life.
The number that shocked me, and you alluded to that, I think this was from USO that I read, that since 9/11, about 7,000 service people were lost in combat, and over 30,000 times 4 were lost to suicide.
Yeah, and that's probably just active duty. If you think about the veteran world, it's much, much worse. And, again, like we've been at war for 20 years. We fought 2 different wars from 2 different continents at the same time. And we're killing ourselves at a multiple higher than the enemy. And it just doesn't make any sense to me.
So I feel like 20 years ago, mental health conversation was not the same as it is today.
Sure.
PTSD, was sort of talked about, but, it's not all PTSD. So can you talk a little bit about what you've seen change and kind of how we address these issues and how we are much more open in talking about these issues?
Yeah, well, I think that hits on the opportunity. The problem is that we don't have enough data. And I never, ever thought I'd be involved with nonprofits. No one's ever looked at me and said, you look like a nonprofit person. I can see you like warm and fuzzy. And I just want to solve the problem. And when we got into this, we initially wanted to help people. And we quickly realized that wasn't good enough. And it happened. We got an award from General Milley in the Pentagon. And long story short, we got to go to 2 unknown soldier. And this young private came up to me and he said, "Hey, sir, congratulations. What's the name of your nonprofit?" And I said, "Stop Soldier Suicide." He goes, "Great. When are you going to do that?" And I have an answer for them because we're focused on outputs rather than outcomes. So to answer your question, it's come a long ways, but we are still a long ways off. We are just right now through Stop Source Suicide and other partners investing into really trying to understand through data quantitatively what happens in the seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months where someone takes their life. How do we start to wrap our arms around this problem and look at it from a quantitative lens and not just qualitative, I feel bad, because that's not going to solve anything. So our mission is to reduce veteran suicide and NASH average by 2030. The good news is that active duty Department of Defense, as well as veterans, I think we all know that mental health is a thing. There's still a lot of hurdles that we need to jump through, but we're hopeful and we think we can win this fight.
So let me ask you this: what do you think puts some people at higher risk? Like, what are the trigger factors? Is it what they experience? Is it support system they have at home? Like, what is it that that stands to make a difference for somebody?
This gets right back to the problem. A couple of years ago, I talked to a suicidologist, a doctorate, and one of the top 5 people, and he told me the lack of data. What he can tell me is that if you're a 25 to 35-year-old white male with access to a firearm that drinks, and you're in that zone, right? That's half the military. Right. So I don't know. The Nick Black version of this is seemingly there's a component of isolation that happens. Isolation and alcohol, access to a firearm, and then bad things happen. Yeah. So, but that's one of the problems that we're trying to solve. How do we actually start putting data to this to answer those questions in a definitive way, rather than just these wide statements of if you're a white male?
Right. Well, and you hit on a really interesting point that something I've been talking to a lot of colleagues, peers, clients, the whole notion of isolation. And, how we've gotten away from community involvement, which, as nonprofit professionals, that certainly impacts us in multiple ways. But, just sort of this sense of isolation where people go to their homes and they don't interact with others. They don't have that community support system.
Yeah. The greatest part of the military is you get to serve with people from all over the country. And then the hardest part is you build that camaraderie through suffering and shared adversity.
Yeah.
Then you get released back to wherever you came from, and then you no longer have that camaraderie. And I know I've suffered with it. I know lots of the men and women I've served with. It's hard. It's hard to reacclimate back to society. It's hard to do all those things, and it's something that we just need to work through.
So you said you're not a likely nonprofit person. When I look at you, I see you as a very likely nonprofit person, because I know you a little bit, just through the work you've done. So was Stop Soldier Suicide, was that your gateway to nonprofit sector, or was it sort of, okay?
Yeah, we're just idiots. So we just wanted to help initially. And we're so creative. We said, what's we going to call this thing? The dumbest and smartest thing we ever did was just call it Stop Soldier Suicide and put an American flag on a logo.
Yeah.
So we didn't try to outthink it. And initially the first year or two was just the 3 of us working the phones, working with veterans in the middle of the night, working through crisis. And then we started, to take a step back, come up with a plan and saying, we need to drive outcomes. We need to start rethinking this problem set because I hate it. I hate being a part of Stop Soldier Suicide. My goal is to shut the thing down. I have, it's been brutal. One of the most brutal experiences of my life is starting Stop Soldier Suicide and growing it. It sucks. It's much harder than starting and growing a for-profit business. And, the emotional tolls a lot, yet, we have to be bold to dare to fail, to try to solve this thing, to think differently, to attack it from different angles. Because my goal is not to do this for the rest of my life. Right. I want to reduce veteran suicide and NASH average by 2030. And let's dare to do it. Not just hang around, let's accomplish something, put it on the goal, build milestones, and do it.
So, some of what you're describing, there's that analogy of pulling people out of the water versus running upstream and finding out why they're falling in the first place. And a lot of what you're describing, it's not just talking to the person downstream and trying to pull them out, but stopping them from falling in the first place.
Yeah, I talk with nonprofits. They ask, well, I need to raise money. And then I play this game of for what? And they go to do stuff. So that what? Well, that's so we can do more. So like, when's the end state? Like, what am I doing? Is this like the never ending investment?
Yeah.
Like, what am I investing into? Is it a milestone? Is it a phase? What's the outcome? Like, what's the point? Like, helping people is one thing, but like going upstream and solving for things, I'll give you a lot more money and I expect you to fail.
Right. Fail fast.
Fail, right? And like, go for it. But like, go upstream. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Like, you never ending giving money. Like, how much do I need to go upstream? Is it $1 million, 5 million, 10 million? What is it? And like, put it on the board and let's go get it.
Right. So let me ask you this. You saw a problem and you jumped in to start making headway to solve it.
Yeah.
And, something that I'm
really unqualified, no idea what I'm doing, but
but I appreciate that about you. Something that I regularly rant about is this whole idea of good intentions.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have ideas, intentions, and talent and everything else, and they just sort of remain intentions.
We have 43,000 veteran serving nonprofits in this country. 43,000. The vast majority of them are incredible human beings that start something in their local community that cannot scale. And I can't tell you the volume and the scale of the problems that we have with veterans that reached out to one of 43,000 with these incredibly well-intentioned people that don't have the capacity to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates a negative experience for the customer, the client, right? That veteran in need. And then sometimes that even triggers the spiral. Like, see, no one's there to help me. I knew it.
Yeah.
Green Bay, whatever, veteran service wasn't there for me when I called. No one sent me an email. I told you no one cares about me. And it's this thing, right? So like well-intentioned is great, but how do we align to an outcome? How do we marshal everyone, egos, especially in the veteran world, that's tough, to work together.
So where do you see headway in finding solutions? Like, what is the model that your organization pursues to address in a preventative way things that are happening?
I think one of the things that I'm very hopeful with is that on the both hand, one, I think that nonprofits are the most undervalued part of our society. Two, I think there's a reason why. So with that, I get a lot of inspiration from organizations like Thorn. Are you familiar with Thorn?
No, I'm not.
So it's Ashton Kutcher's venture.
Oh, yes.
But if you take a look at their websites, thorn.org, and what they're doing is getting different minds to the table, from data to technology to nonprofit to sales to marketing, and really thinking about, diversity of thought, diversity of everything. How do we attack this problem in asymmetric ways?
Mm-hmm.
And so my hope, and where I think that this is going, is that we can get more people from different backgrounds looking at social issues because they're so expensive. And we can start to think about scalable solutions, not just driving outputs or work. And like, that's how I try to look at Stop Source Suicide. Do we have the right minds to the table? We have a chief data officer. We have a chief technology officer. Are we getting the person that understands large language modeling to take a look at what veterans are saying in the hours before they die?
Mm-hmm.
What insights are we driving? How do we start thinking differently? And the best news is, especially in the nonprofit world, a lot of this has been solved just in a different industry.
Mm-hmm.
We have to take a tool that's built for X and apply it to Y. And I think that's one of the big areas of opportunity for any nonprofit, to speak to more people, to understand what's happening in cyber or wherever it might be. And how could that apply to my world and social impact?
So let me transition. So you started this nonprofit, and how many years later did you throw things in with Good United?
Well, I thought fundraising would be easy, and that was not true. So it made me so angry. I started Good United with my business partner, Jeremy Berman. So I think that was 4 years in.
Okay, 4 years in.
Yeah.
And what are the big trends? I mean, we're all reading the Giving USA report, kind of the drop off at giving, et cetera. What are the trends that you're seeing, and what are the trends that we're not paying attention to that we should be?
Well, I think M&R does a great job of publishing the benchmark report. And I think 2023 is pretty evident of, the existing channels, the existing mediums of how we connect with people are still viable. They're still great, but they're declining in effectiveness and efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the general trend is I've yet to meet anyone that hangs out at nonprofit websites. Right. So then if you ask the next question, where are you?
I'm on Sephora.com, but that's just me.
Yeah. And so let's meet people where they're at. And that's the trend. COVID was an accelerant for many different things. I think it was an accelerant for people to go into different virtual pieces. My belief, and I'd love for someone to debate this, but I don't think we're becoming more centralized as we go forward in time. I think we get more decentralized. So like the days of like one funnel through your website and having one lead email thing, I don't see how that's going to work anymore. I think that people are going to spread out into different niches, different parts of the web, different parts of wherever, find communities where they're at. And I think the challenge set for nonprofits is, who is your community? Where do they spend time? And how do I engage them where they're at, not where I want them to be?
That's right. Flipping the equation a little bit.
Yeah. And it's amazing. I mean, we've seen organizations that, find fit with people that bake. And like bakers are hell of a good fundraisers. Or like they want to talk about baking, find where they're at and build a community with them where they are. Don't ask them to leave. They're hanging out where they want to spend time, right? Don't show up and then say, I want to take you to a place that really isn't that much fun.
Right.
Come with me, because they're not going to do it.
But Nick, if we build it, they will come.
Exactly. That's a good United to everyone to flip it, right? Get them to come and then build it.
So speaking of places to hang out, and we're, now that we're talking literally within hours, if not days, Facebook, I was going to say unleashed, but introduced.
Yeah.
Introduced Threads.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear, what you think. I mean, is it just an alternative to Twitter? Is it going to be the next big thing because Facebook has so much muscle and so much audience? Or is it just going to go by the way of the house party that was sort of a blip?
I have no idea. I'm
Are you on it?
My business partner, Jeremy, would be better. I barely know how to turn on my phone. But what I do think is that Meta is very smart. And what I talk to nonprofits with is like, tell me about your back-end engineers. And they look at me and like open eyes, like, what do you mean? They're saying, that's what I mean, right? So like the smartest people on the planet work in Palo Alto, California. So are you going to fight them or are you going to roll with them? So like if they're investing in the Threads, if they're investing in these things, I take a hard look at what this means. But again, what I think it is that people are going to continue to expand to engage in these communities in new ways, whether it's Twitter-like or whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn. Like what's the next LinkedIn? Like it blows my mind how fundraisers don't weaponize LinkedIn. Seemingly every other business has, and yet I've never been asked in LinkedIn to have a conversation with a fundraiser. So
one is coming your way as soon as we wrap up here. So absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm doing a CEO soak in a couple of weeks. So
I think it's exciting and I think it's worth testing. I think it's trying to find, again, what's your niche? Where are they? And if they're not spending time there, then like who is? Is there an opportunity? But I think it's so exciting what's happening. It can be daunting because you're looking at all these different pools of where people are. But when you find your fit, it's just a hell of a lot easier than just trying to be right for everyone.
So let me ask the question slightly differently about Threads. So in the cage match, Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. Well, I did watch Zuckerberg do some jiu-jitsu and he looks pretty squared away. So I think I'd take Zuckerberg over Elon. But I'm still interested. I'm really interested how Threads interacts with Instagram in the nonprofit world, right? The saying is we've helped raise over $1 billion on Facebook and then like hundreds in Instagram. And like we believe we know how to crack through Instagram. But what does this mean? Right? Is this the back-end engine of driving philanthropy? One of our team members yesterday launched a fundraiser through Threads. Right. So like that's interesting. Right. And so like what would Twitter be with peer-to-peer fundraising? So like I think that's going to be an interesting momentum. If you can find your thread, your community, how can you integrate yourself part of the story in the narrative to start to put those fundraising calls to action to be a positive force for whatever that thread or story is?
Yeah, no, that's a really fascinating one. And also, I think you can post images, but it's definitely not the main feature of the platform, obviously. So I will be very curious because given Instagram's impact on aesthetics and beauty standards and all of those types of things. And mental health, frankly.
It's a whole wide world that's coming. We have, WhatsApp, Threads, Messenger, those three. Then you have the LinkedIn messaging. You have all these other social platforms. And we're trying to solve that through Good United to be able to empower organizations, to meet people where they're at through one solution. But it's exciting times.
So, Nick, this has been really illuminating. And I want to wrap up with a little game, a round of Two Truth and a Lie. Have you ever played that?
No. You sent me an email. I didn't know what that meant.
Okay. So let me explain it to you and I'll teach you real quick. So you tell me 3 things about yourself and 2 of them are truthful and 1 of them is a fib. And no pressure, but I have learned about somebody who plays bagpipes. Some things that have come out have been really fascinating and illuminating, and you can take it in any direction that you personally would like.
I like dogs more than I like people. I have climbed Mount Everest, and I grew up in Africa.
Okay, so I'm going to go dogs. Absolutely true.
This is true.
Because they are better.
Yes,
than
this is just you're wise. Way
I have one underfoot here on the soft little blankie. I'm going to say that grew up in Africa is probably true because you did mention families. Background. I was paying attention. See,
Mount Everest. The lie right in the middle.
Yeah, and I'm guessing Mount Everest is something that you're considering. You haven't done yet, but I'm guessing that's something you've thought about.
Considering is a strong word, but I find I love listening to podcasts about climbing. Mm-hmm. Doing it, I didn't enjoy too much in Afghanistan, but the concept of it sounds intriguing. Maybe like if I could lose like 100 pounds, maybe that'll do it then.
Well, I think by the time you reach the summit, you kind of do. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a sense of accomplishment, right? Like it's a destination. So.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right.
Well, Nick, thank you for joining me. And I really appreciate your time. And it's wonderful to meet you in person. So hopefully we'll meet face to face soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity. Hopefully see you in Northern Virginia.
See you soon.
Cheers.